So welcome to everyone that is here in the room, in the sanctuary today, and welcome to everyone who has so generously invited us into your homes today. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Reverend Dusty Ripplemeyer, and I am the spiritual director of this amazing community. And it is a special day today, yes? It is Mother's Day. And I bless each and every single mother on the planet, and all of the mothers that have come before that have made their transition and can't be here with us today. And I bless all of the grandmothers and all of the great-grandmothers for all that you have done, not only for your own children, but for your children's children and your children's children's children. And I bless each and every single father and every gay dad who supports their children in two roles, both as a father and as a mother. Yes. And I bless the willing women who stepped in and provided maternal wisdom and nurturing when your birth mother was unable to do so. And I bless those women who have a pet, knowing that we love and care for our pets in much the same way that you love and care for your children. So there are many mothers on the planet and many mothers to celebrate today. So the flower that you received as you came into the sanctuary represents our gratitude and our love for who you are, for the consciousness of nurturing that you bring to the planet, and for all that you do, not only for this community, for your families, for this community, but...
The reading for today is from Mark Nepo. And as a side note, if you've never read anything by Mark Nepo, shame on you. This is a fabulous, anything he writes is fabulous. So these are his words. Each person is born with an unencumbered spot, free of expectation and regret, free of ambition and embarrassment, free of fear and worry, an umbilical spot of grace where we each first were touched by God. It is this spot of grace that issues peace. Psychologists call it the psyche. Theologists call it the soul. Jung calls it the seat of the unconscious. Hindu masters called it Atman. Buddhists call it Dharma. Rilke calls it inwardness, Sufis call it Kalb, and Jesus calls it the center of our love. To know this spot of inwardness is to know who we are, not by surface markers of identity, not by where we work or what we wear or how we'd like to be addressed, but by feeling our place in relation to the infinite and by inhabiting it. This is a hard, lifelong task, for the nature of becoming is a constant filming over of where we begin, while the nature of being is a constant erosion of what is not essential. We each live in the midst of this ongoing tension, growing tarnished or covered over only to be worn back into the incorruptible spot of grace at our very core. Powerful.
So the theme of the month, as Betty said, is spiritual guidance and personal responsibility, and my talk title today is Spiritual Guidance. I know how you guys like it so much when it matches the theme. And the underlying statement from Ernest Holmes' What We Believe statements is, we see a world in which spiritual life is valued. We see a world in which spiritual life is valued. What does a spiritual life mean? Now, the spiritual life of any person is the path that a person chooses to take in response to the God within. It is a path. The spiritual life is a path. It is more than simply a doctrine or a belief. It is the conscious choosing of a direction. Now, our English word belief comes from the Anglo-Saxon word which means by life. So it's an understanding that belief is a way of life. Having a spiritual life is an inner experience. The only way that we can ever experience God is from within. Now, this is often a little bit hard for us because, as human beings, because we seem to be tied into only that which we can perceive through our senses, only that which we can see or hear or feel or taste or smell. And if we can't do that, through our human perceptions, then how do we know that it's really there? If we can't do that, then how do we know that it's available to us? A woman by the name of Rachel Naomi Remen, in her book Kitchen Table Wisdom, tells this really sweet, although it doesn't start out so sweet, but it becomes really sweet, this really sweet story about when she was a young girl. And she says that God was still discussed in the public schools during that time. She recalled one particular assembly when the principal, who was a fundamentalist, delivered a fire and brimstone kind of sermon to the entire grammar school. Now, she read a passage from the Bible to them and told them that they needed to get down on their knees 3 times a day because they needed to remind God that they were there. You prayed because you had to make God look at you in order for God to know that you were there. If God turned his face away from you, she told the now hushed assembly of children, you would wither up and die like an autumn leaf. Can you imagine? Now, she remembered that as a 5-year-old, it seemed to her that God probably had a lot of other things to think about besides her. So, in between the times that she was praying, she thought that God might blink. And then what would become of her? Now, she spoke of the fear and the tremendous terror that she experienced when she thought about this idea, what if God blinks? She became so obsessed with the question, so fearful that she was unable to sleep. Now, her grandfather was a rabbi, so she thought that she would ask him for some advice about this. And when she finally got her grandfather to herself, she told him what had happened, and she asked him the fearful question, what if God blinks? Now, holding her as she cried, he asked her, if you woke up in the middle of the night in your room, would you know that your mother and father had gone out and left you alone in the house? Still crying, she nodded yes. And how would you know that, he asked. Would you see them and look at them? She shook her head no. Would you hear them? No, she said again. And then he asked her, could you touch them? Now, by then she had stopped crying, and she remembered really puzzling over his questions because it seemed so obvious to her that she would simply just know that they were in the house. She would just know that. So she told him this, and he nodded, pleased, good. That's just how God knows that you are here. God doesn't need you to pray, doesn't need to look at you to know that you are there. God just knows. And in that very same way, you know that God is there. You simply know that God is there. Rachel Naomi Remen says, God's presence in the house is an inner experience that never changes. It's a relationship that's there all the time, even when we're not paying attention to it. Perhaps the infinite holds us to itself in the same way that the earth does. Like gravity, if it ever stopped, we would know it instantly. But it never does. The inner knowing is a way in which I orient myself, an unfailing point of reference. Its effect on my life is as profound, as deep as gravity's influence on my body. Now, living from this inner knowing is living a spiritual life. Many religions consider that we are children of God, the children of God. And as a Center for Spiritual Living who follows the teachings of Ernest Holmes, we believe that we were created in the image and likeness of God, imbued with all that God is. We believe that there is a spark of the divine within each of us, and that our spiritual path is one in which we desire to be in alignment with that divine spark, with the Christ consciousness that's within us. We recognize that it's a lifelong path, a journey of becoming. When we arrived on the planet, we were fully orbed, but we forget. We lose our way. And the journey that we're on is one of making our way back home again. We're evolving, we're growing, we're maturing, we are deepening. And as our human mothers and fathers nurtured and teach us in our human growth, so does our inner wisdom, our inner knower, the spark of the divine within, encouraging and fostering our growth on this spiritual path, our evolution on this spiritual path. Now, this isn't spiritual guidance from anyone outside of ourselves, but it's guidance from within. Guidance that we are encouraged to listen for and to listen to. There is that within us that knows the truth, that sees a bigger picture from a higher realm. And we often call this inner guidance insight or intuition. Now, the definition of insight or intuition is the instance of apprehending or catching the true nature of something. It is the ability to perceive deeply and clearly. It is penetrating and often sudden mental vision or discernment, a faculty of seeing the underlying truth. Now, synonyms can include spiritual perception, revelation, or spiritual understanding. It is our ability to know immediately without having to reason. We just know it. It comes to us by way of the still small voice within us. And when that inner voice is heard strongly and persistently, we would do well to heed it. It is that important. So what allows this still voice within us to speak to us? What allows this voice of God to clearly make its way to us? What allows us to suddenly perceive clearly and deeply, to catch the true nature of something? Ernest Holmes says, perhaps the simplest way to state the proposition is to say that we are surrounded by a mind or intelligence that knows everything, that the potential knowledge of all things exists in this mind, that the abstract essence of beauty, truth, and wisdom coexist in this mind, that we also exist in it, and that we may draw from it. A unity must be established, and a conscious connection must be made before we can derive the benefits which the greater mind is willing to reveal or impart to us. So there is one mind, one life, one heart, and we are connected to it. We are connected to it in ways that can never be broken. It is closer to us than our very breath. It's the spark of the divine within us, and it is always there, ready, willing, and able to feed us, to source us, to inform us, to guide us. Ernest Holmes goes on to say, I am a center in the divine mind, a point of consciousness, life, truth, and action. My affairs are divinely guarded and guided into right action, into correct results. So we're surrounded, right? We're surrounded by this infinite mind. We are indwelled by this infinite mind. It is everywhere that we are. And should we become receptive to it, should we allow it to flow through us, then it would be able to inform us of everything and anything, because it is all intelligence, it is all wisdom, it is all clarity, and it is connected to us in ways that can't be broken, and it is always willing to inform us. Now, Ernest Holmes says the infinite wisdom becomes human knowledge in such a degree as the human furnishes a channel through which it might flow. The greatest people who have ever lived have recognized this fact. They have consciously expected it, consciously accepted it, consciously received it, and then there came a time when they let it flow through them. So how do we become receptive to it? How do we become a channel for it? Now, for me today, always evolving, right? But for me today, right now, in this moment, I know 5 really important intentions that we need to have, that we need to do in order to perceive. In order to perceive this wisdom, in order to perceive this guidance, in order to be a channel for it to flow through us. And for me, these are connections, meditation, emptiness, expectation, and listening. So spiritual guidance invites us to stay connected. To stay connected. And in order to do this, we must remember each and every moment of each and every day who and whose we are. We must hold the truth that we were created by and out of God as the underlying awareness of our very being. The Master Teacher Jesus said, "The Father and I are one." The Father and I are one, and he never wavered from that truth and was deeply connected at all times because of it. Now, he was a great example for us in how we should live our lives, deeply connected to our oneness with God, our oneness with the divine. Spiritual guidance invites us to sit in meditation. Now, in order to do this, we must be still. We need to quiet our human minds, which are constantly chattering, constantly filling our days with thoughts of fear, doubt, anxiety, and worry. These thoughts cloud our ability to perceive it. They interfere with our ability to listen to that still small voice within. So we need to get quiet. We need to be still. We need to do it religiously. Spiritual guidance invites us to be empty. Now, this means the ability to stand in our awareness that we really know nothing. That we really know nothing. It is a return to the blank slate that we arrived on the planet as. This allows us to be receptive. When we are that blank slate, when we let go of any feelings, thoughts, or beliefs that do not serve us, when we let go of any feelings, thoughts, or beliefs that get in our way, that create resistance to the flow of that wisdom through us. And when we can do that, we become more receptive to that wisdom. Spiritual guidance asks us to expect. Could also be called believe or trust, but expect, to expect. And it is quite simply stated in the Bible in Matthew. Verse 7 says, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you." Bless you. Expect the flow, and the flow of wisdom, the flow of insight, the flow of divine intelligence, the flow of intuition will flow through and as you, with ease and with grace. Expect it. It is a promise. It is our birthright. It's good news, yes? Yeah. All right then. And lastly, spiritual guidance invites us to listen. To listen. Now, Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith would call this reverent listening. Listening as though you were about to hear or to see or to feel or to experience the most important thing that you have ever seen, heard, felt, or experienced in your entire life, because that's the truth. That could be exactly what happens. It could forever change your mind. This one instant, it could forever change your life. This one instant in time. This one moment of divine guidance. Now, Mark Nepo, who Ruth spoke praises of, wrote a book called 7,000 Ways to Listen. It is a beautiful book. Really, it is an absolutely beautiful book. He uses, the way that he says things, he uses these metaphors that you just take in and you hear in a way that just allows you to really understand the concept. So I have a few quotes because I want you to hear it in his words so that you can really take this in. But if Michael Beckwith calls this reverent listening, Mark Nepo calls it deep listening. Deep listening. And this way of listening, according to him, actually includes deep listening, deep speaking, and deep questioning. Now we listen deeply by listening to the source through immersion, absorption, and presence. Now, immersion means to be engaged wholly or completely, to be absorbed or engrossed in, to lose oneself. You've been there. We've all been there, yes? Immersed. Absorption means the process or action by which one thing absorbs or is absorbed by another, or the state of being engrossed in something. So you're kind of getting the picture here, yes? Immersed, engrossed. And lastly, he says it's presence. Now, presence means the state of existing, occurring, or being present in a place or thing. So in this moment, I ask you, how have you been listening lately? Have you been deeply listening? Have you been listening from a space in which you are totally present to the now moment? Are you wholly engaged, completely absorbed, and totally engrossed in whatever it is you are listening to? That is the way to deeply listen. That is the way to listen for our spiritual guidance. Now, Mark Nepo says we can always begin by allowing ourselves to sink into the depth of whatever moment we are in. For depth is always present. We don't have to travel to find depth. We simply have to relax our mind into the ground of where we are. Relax our mind into the ground of where we are, just like the roots that unravel into the earth after a long soaking rain. Can you get that? To just be grounded in that now moment like those roots. To be so totally engrossed and immersed in that moment. Now we speak deeply by listening with heart to the source. that no matter who or what conveys it, to listen with heart, and then translate that presence into meaningful speech. Now, Mark Nepo says, how might you practice speaking deeply? The first thing is to accept and work with what you hear. Accept and work with what you hear. We filter what we hear through what we believe. Yes? We filter what we hear through what we believe, and in that we limit what we take in to only what is familiar. Now this narrows our understanding of things as they are. Speaking deeply has something to do with letting things pass through our hearts as they are. The way ink is pressed through silk to imprint a lasting design that we can wear. Isn't that beautiful? The way that ink is pressed through silk to imprint a lasting design that we can wear. This is to speak deeply. Now we question deeply by listening to what is offered and surfacing its meaning and usefulness through further questioning and honest dialogue. Further questioning and honest dialogue. The challenge is that not all questions are created equal. That some of them open us up more than others. Some invite a deeper exploration of the answer. Mark Nepo asks, how might you practice questioning deeply? Think of a deep question as a door that opens between you and what you experience. Not as a veiled way to criticize or take things apart, or as a strategy to bide some time till we can pursue our own agenda. What can you ask that will open that door? What can you ask that will let you enter what has been opened? As a sign of a good question is that the questioner is more alive for having asked the question. Is more alive for having asked the question. Now, some ideas of good questions could include, what can I choose in this situation that will empower me? What choice can I make in this moment that would be a choice from my divinity? How can I use this situation as a catalyst to grow? What can I do that will add to my life force? And how can I stand in self-love in this situation? Can you hear how those questions can open you up? Can allow for a deeper inquiry? Thomas Troward says the importance of understanding and following the intuition cannot be exaggerated. It cannot be exaggerated. So the invitation is to remember that you are one with God, to stay deeply connected to the power and presence that is within you and surrounding you. The invitation today is to meditate regularly, to get still and quiet your mind. The invitation today is to empty your minds of thoughts of lack, limitation, unworthiness, worry, fear, doubt, and anything else that does not serve you. The invitation today is to be a blank slate upon which God can write the guidance that could forever transform your life. The invitation today is to expect. Expect that Source is always ready, willing, and able to guide, feed, fuel, fund, source, and support you. The invitation today is to reverently, deeply listen for and to this guidance, and to be willing to allow it to lead you to your highest and best. The invitation today is to remember that this still small voice that is within you is always for you and never against you, and that it will always steer you in the right direction. Always. So please read this affirmation along with me. I honor the divinity within me and joyfully allow this inner guidance to show me the way toward wise, loving, and harmonious choices. And so it is. Amen. Thank you, everyone. So I just invite us to turn within. Uh-oh. While I love this song, it's not exactly the one I was thinking of to pray to, so we'll just sit in the silence. Yeah, there's the ticket. So I invite you to turn within, to close your outer eyes and turn away from this world of form, turn away from that which we can only see through our human vision, our human hearing, our human touch, our human taste, and our human smell, and to allow ourselves to turn within to that space and place that allows us to be connected to spiritual perception. That space and place that is the very wisdom of God itself. That space and place that is the universal mind, that is the container for all knowledge throughout all time, in the past, the present, and in the future. And to know that each of us is connected to that one mind in ways that can never be broken. That truly we swim in that mind, and that mind, that wisdom, that clarity, that knowing is available to us each and every moment of each and every day. And so what I call forward from each of us is this intention for connection, this intention for emptiness, this intention to meditate, this intention to expect, and this intention to deeply listen. And that with all of that, from that space, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we will always be guided, always be sourced, always be fueled, always be funded, always be supported in everything that we do. For truly the universe is always for us. And so I call forward ease and grace around stepping into this way of being, stepping into this way of opening ourselves to that flow of wisdom, allowing ourselves to be a channel of it, to be a blank slate upon which our highest and best is written. And I'm so grateful to know this truth and to be able to speak these words today. So grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into a law that only ever says yes, that they are clothed in form immediately. And so I speak them with gratitude, with love, and full expectation of their manifestation. And I invite each of us to anchor it for ourselves and for each other by saying, "And so it is. Amen."